to Heroes Forge, a Heroes of the Storm podcast.
Hello Forgers, and welcome back to Season 3, episode number 113 of Heroes Forge, a community-driven podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. As always, this podcast is brought to you by our out-of-this-world supporters on patreon.com/HeroesForge. This is your show host, as always, Jeff Reynolds, but I'm not the main event today, because Kristen is out on vacation this week, and I'm honored to say that I'm joined by the incredible host and creator of the Nexus Trolls podcast. Yes, another Heroes of the Storm podcast that you must be listening to out there. It's Daz. What's going on, Daz?
Oh man, I'm so excited to be here. You don't even know. This is like my bucket list. I think I started podcasting with the end game of making sure I had a guest spot on Heroes Forge podcast.
Dude, that's so awesome. I'm glad that you're here. We've been talking about this since BlizzCon, when I finally got to meet you in person last year. And I mean, that's just the definition of BlizzCon, right? Where you get to meet a ton of people that you idolize, that you listen to every single day, that are members of the same community that you are. So when I got to meet you, it was so cool to be able to finally talk, and we hyped this up, and now it's finally happening, what, 6 months later?
Yeah, I've been counting down the days for this too. I'm so hyped to get like our forging on, and even talking about BlizzCon too. I think I pretty much tell everyone I meet that talks about Heroes Forge or whatever, I'm like, and Jeff is the coolest guy to meet in person. He's amazing. Like, I couldn't believe it. A lot of people, I feel like they have like almost like a different persona when you meet them in person, but I'm like, it's like you're still in character. So that's just you know, that's how you are. You're amazing. You're high energy. You're a lot of fun to be around. You felt like very warming to everyone who was meeting you too, which I thought was really cool. So if you haven't got a chance to, and I know Jeff's going to be at next BlizzCon, definitely stop by and say hi, and don't feel nervous at all. I felt kind of weird going up to some people that I've never met at BlizzCon before, but I met Jeff, I met Kristen, I met Kyle from Into the Nexus. Everyone was so amazing, so warming, so receptive. Great community we got here.
Thanks, man. Right back at you. I mean, it was awesome meeting you and awesome talking Heroes, which is what we're here to do today. But before we get into talking about Heroes of the Storm, this game we all know and love, Daz, you got to tell everybody a little bit about yourself. So where did you start with Blizzard games? Where did it all begin for you, this passion for Blizzard?
Back in the days of yore, I actually played my first Blizzard game was Warcraft Orcs and Humans. I played that in grade school. I think it was like maybe grade 6, grade 7 at the time. And I had it on my PC. I played it. I was like, this is amazing. I had so much fun, like building a city and like moving on, like taking over like, the human cities. Obviously the orcs were the coolest, and like just kind of like having that experience. And then I remember when Warcraft 2 came out and just took it to the next level. Like the cinematics were amazing. The gameplay was awesome. I think I had my first like LAN parties with all my friends, like just playing Warcraft 2. It was something that we all could like geek out and nerd out over. And then obviously Warcraft 3 kept it going. I played some StarCraft. I dabbled in Diablo. And then I had the dark period of gaming for Daz. I didn't play much games when I went through university at all. I missed out on the boat for World of Warcraft. I know that like tears you up a little bit inside. But then I came back into it when Hearthstone came into the scene. My stepbrother was like, hey, have you heard of this new Blizzard card game? I was like, Blizzard's making a card game? Are you kidding me? So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. It's free to play. Why not? Nothing to lose. Cracked open the tablet, played some Hearthstone, and just like it brought back so many memories of Warcraft 3, Warcraft 2, like just that whole universe. I got into it. I actually started listening to The Angry Chicken, fellow AMove podcast. Got really into it. Was like, oh, this is amazing. There's got this whole podcast community. I heard about this game called Heroes of the Storm that Garrett kept talking about, so I popped into that for the beta. I started listening to Into the Nexus and kind of got hooked on just Heroes of the Storm, and then turns out podcasting afterwards was the natural flow after that. So here I am. I started up the Nexus Trolls with Liquid and Mystic. You can catch that over on twitch.tv/TrollsGG. We're part of the Trolls GG Entertainment Network, and we have a blast every week. So come join us.
Your show is great. I mean, we had the honor of guesting on that show a while ago. I mean, I want to say it was almost a year ago we got to go on there, and we did a little bit of flash forging, and we talked about heroes that were coming out. And, that is something that I that I envy with shows like yours, the ability to talk super intelligently about the heroes that are out there, the strategies. I mean, you guys and Mystic and everybody, I mean, and Liquid just talking about esports and all this stuff on your show is just great. I mean, check it out. Make sure you do. Nexus Trolls, download it on your favorite podcasting app of choice. Do it, do it, do it. But that's not where you stopped, though, Daz. I mean, I think the biggest event for podcasters in the Heroes of the Storm universe, not just podcasters, creators, is Creators of the Storm.
Yeah, what ended up happening is, I think just a few months after we started up the Nexus Trolls, we kind of started spitballing the idea of having like a cool little mini tournament where we got all the creators in the community together and just like had a fun, wacky game or tournament consisting of a bunch of games, mashing up podcasts together, just making a fun, lighthearted tournament. And we had no idea if it was going to be successful or not. We ended up getting Haloran to cast the first one, which was, I think it was back in like July or something. Got a whole bunch of different podcasts to come on, met a whole bunch of people, just found out how amazing the community was. I was surprised how like many people were willing to do this. It ended up being so successful. We did it again. And the second time round was about a month ago, I guess. We were on the Blizzard launcher. We got a whole bunch of like extra production value. Jeff joined us too, which is cool. It was for his first Creators of the Storm. And we had like an absolute blast, just like seeing all the different personalities, having that great event, and just getting involved with the community. It was a really fun time, and I hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, well, sign me up, man. I had a blast. It was so fun. I was part of Lords of the HeroesForge, in case you don't know, the #1 HGC team out there that went undefeated in the round robin and then promptly lost all their games after that.
Oh, we thought you guys were going to stomp in the finals too. You and the Lords of the Storm, all the Zord Lords. You guys were mopping the table, just making everyone else look like noobs. But then all of a sudden, the playoffs came and the tables turned, and that can happen in tournaments, right?
That's right. Couldn't handle the pressure, man. We could not handle the pressure. You know, we had a 45-minute ARAM game in that tournament, right? And it was at the very end, and I was playing Johanna, and I get to the very end, and we're killing the enemy team's core after 45 minutes. I mean, I've got pit stains. I'm like sweating, just you know, all crazy. And I went on the microphone and I said, as we're like, you know, down to 50%, I said, guys, is this a good time for me to tell you all that I have no idea what Johanna's Q does?
Maybe that made the game an extra 20 minutes longer. You guys would have finished it earlier if you knew what your Q button did.
Oh man, it's a blast. Check it out, Creators of the Storm. You can find information about it, and make sure that you follow Daz on Twitter, because there's a lot of cool stuff that he talks about, including Creators of the Storm, so that you can stay up on the hype when that comes back. And his Twitter handle is @DazHots, HOTS, for Heroes of the Storm. So this we didn't have a show last week, so we didn't have the opportunity to talk about Phoenix, but I want to talk about Phoenix a little bit with you, Daz. So what are your thoughts? First of all, I mean, Dragoon,
awesome, right? Like having that StarCraft character, and I feel like it was the one real missing link StarCraft character that we needed. We knew there was a StarCraft character coming, and everyone's like, it's gotta be Phoenix. The only question I feel like was, is he gonna be a Dragoon? Is he gonna be one of his other forms? Because he gets resurrected, I don't even know how many times throughout the course of the StarCraft history, you know, spoilers, sorry. But you got him as a Dragoon, which is cool. It's a very characteristic unit from StarCraft 1 and 2. And it just feels so cool to play. I'm not sure if you had a chance to play him yet, Jeff, but he is fun.
I haven't had a chance. I mean, I'll be honest. Assassins are not my thing, because you have to be really good. I mean, you got to really be out there and good. I can do the kind of, you know, fly by the seat of my pants support or tank even to kind of help peel, but Assassins I never really clicked with. But man, the model is incredible. The abilities look so cool. The shields, I think the shields, tell me about it. I mean, have you experienced, are they OP? It seems like it would be OP.
I think he's just generally OP and crazy. Like, maybe this is the time to dust off your assassin like rust and bring him in, because I think he's going to be hard to kill. I think they need to tune him down a little bit too. At least that's the general consensus that I'm hearing when I talk to people. The shields just make it so strong. Like, you don't have to get healed as often, so you're less of a strain on your healer because they got to chunk through your shields before they even do actual damage to you. You can just back off the fight, heal up to full essentially and come back in. He's so tanky with those shields and the health. Like, put them together, I think he's tankier than most melee assassins, and he's strong, powerful, got really crazy auto attacks, got AoE auto attacks. You can warp in, warp out, like everything that you want. Whoever created that one must have been listening to the last HeroesForge podcast.
Perfect. Just what we need is another mini tank like Thrall.
Yeah, exactly. And Thrall's been fun to play too, but watch out for Phoenix.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, they already got my shards regardless, man. I got to keep that hero collection going. So they got my shards. So we'll see how Phoenix plays out for me, and I'm curious to see how it works out with the community out there. You know, it's a thing that we've been experiencing where they release these new heroes, and then of course they got to kind of tune them around the way the community plays. I'm sure that when they're playing it internally, it feels good, right? Everybody's really good, I bet. Like, you know, they play this game for a living, literally. So they're out there, you know, tuning in and like, okay, but I'm sure they build it into the design philosophy to say, now we're going to put it out in the wild and see how it does. And there have been some examples, just a few, where it needs to be tuned up, but usually they're tuning it down.
Well, Maiev, right? She's been tuned down consistently for the past, week after week since she's been released. So, maybe we might be hitting another situation like that with Phoenix. Who knows? I've been definitely wrong before. I thought Blaze was going to be released and be super OP, but he had a low win rate. I thought Maiev was going to crash and burn. Turns out she was OP as crazy she could be. And hey, but I think I might be on the spot with this one, with Phoenix being strong if they release him like he is.
Yeah, you can't predict it, which is part of the fun. It's a ton of fun. Speaking of fun, let's do what we're here to do, and let's forge.
Let's forge.
All right, well, before we even start this, I got to thank you, Daz, for coming on the show, because it's awesome to be able to talk heroes and to talk forging and theory crafting and all this crazy stuff that we kind of just fly by the seat of our pants and come up with on this show. So if you're listening to the show for the first time, welcome to all the Nexus Trolls out there that might be listening to it for the first time, and thank you for being here. Thank you for downloading and all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through or theory craft a new hero for the Nexus. This can be any character that is in any of the Blizzard universes that is out there, and we know that is plentiful, right? I mean, there are thousands and thousands of characters out there, some of them with super developed backstories and names, and some of them without. And if they don't have a super backstory or name, what we do is we just make it up. I mean, it's part of the fun. Think about Probius. Think about some of these characters that are in the game now that Blizzard's kind of just conjured from nothing. So that's what we're kind of trying to do here. And this week is no different. And Daz, since you're the guest, you got to pick who we're forging on the show. So why don't you tell everybody out there, who exactly are we forging this afternoon?
We are forging the Goblin Zeppelin. Now, this is a unit, so it's not, again, like Jeff said, one of those characters with an established backstory. So we get to give our good old Goblin pilot, I guess, names and everything and backstories to go with it. So you want me to read the introduction here for the good old Goblin Zeppelin, Jeff?
Absolutely. Take it away. I mean, we've all seen this Zeppelin out there. I mean, if you've played Warcraft, if you played World of Warcraft, I mean, you've seen this, it's not subtle.
Yeah, he's been there since the beginning, right? Okay, so as one of the staples of Goblin ingenuity, the Goblin Zeppelin has been an integral part of the Horde's spy network since the early days of the Horde. Cumbersome and awkward, which is one of the things I love about Zeppelins too. These flying contraptions can only be maintained and piloted by creatures as conniving and innovative as the Goblins of Kazan. First seen in Warcraft 2, Goblin Zeppelins were fast-moving reconnaissance units with extensive line of sight, but they didn't actually have any offensive weaponry at all. And despite Goblins' known affection for explosives and destruction, which is another reason we all love Goblins, right? And then in Warcraft 3, Goblin Zeppelins evolved from a fast-moving recon unit to a slower-moving transport carrier, crucial for allowing for land units to traverse otherwise impassable terrain like lakes and mountains. And in World of Warcraft, and Jeff had to help me out in writing this part of it because I don't play a ton of WoW, but that's a story for another day. The Zeppelin has been seen many times throughout the years, used for moving goods, mobile horde camps, war machines, and even as a personal transport for Galawigs. To this day, the Zeppelin is an example of one of the most stable technological devices to be found in Azeroth, a trait uncommon of Goblin inventions, and malfunctions tend to be non-threatening. Well, I'd hope if it malfunctions in the air, it's non-threatening, because that's a long way to fall.
Yeah, you ever seen the Hindenburg?
Yeah, turns out these things can be dangerous if that balloon bursts.
Oh yeah, what a great story. What a cool unit, right? I mean, really, when it comes to the RTS feel and the RTS, genre, we've seen units like this Medevac Transport, we've seen the Zeppelins, and then that same feel transfers over into World of Warcraft, right? You use it to go and traverse mountains, and you traverse the ocean, right, to get to the other side, and all this stuff that you can use as a Horde player is with the Zeppelin, and they're huge, like we talked about before. These giant balloons with almost like boat-like structures on the bottom of the balloon that carries the crew from wherever they're going. In Wrath of the Lich King, it was one of the flight paths that you could fly to in one of the zones, Ice Crown Citadel, like you're flying around, all this stuff. And so, I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, is that Zeppelin that you know and love. And you might be thinking to yourself, how in the world are we going to bring the Zeppelin into the Nexus? I think it's easy. That's the next place it needs to go.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you do with it too. I know what I'm going to be bringing with it, but I mean, there's challenges too, because it's typically just a transport unit, right? There's not a lot of offensive weaponry. So how do you can't have a character, well, maybe you can, I don't know, I guess we'll find out from Jeff, but that doesn't do any damage, right? Like, it's got to be able to do some offensive bit and bring something to team fight, something to the game. And I think a Zeppelin is going to bring something unique, and we'll find out today.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And I know that I want to pick your brain about that at the end of this. If you think that there could be a hero that we bring into the Nexus that doesn't have any offensive abilities, right? Would that be something that would be viable? Would it be something that would have to be super powerful in the things that it does in order to sacrifice the damage that you would be doing? I mean, I've been practicing over and over and over auto attacking on Stukov, right? Well, not only because he has the highest auto attack out there, but also because every little bit of damage matters. So what would they need to do? But we'll sidebar that, and we'll get into this build now. So the first thing we're going to talk about is if you were to give this Zeppelin a name, right? Or the captain a name, or the crew a name, because it doesn't have a name traditionally in any of the games that it appears in. So what are you going with?
I'm going with Twex Boom Skimmer, the name of the pilot. It's a goblin female too. Twex is apparently goblin female name. I'll be honest, I had to cheat a little bit. I went to like a WoW name generator. I kept hitting the refresh button because I was like, I gotta get a legitimate goblin name. So Twex Boom Skimmer. I mixed and matched some of the stuff I saw and was like, that's perfect. That's who I'm gonna be calling my hero today.
Yeah, totally. I have those name generators bookmarked. Man, we got to get in there and get those names, I'm telling you. And there's some things like goblins, which I don't play Horde, I play Alliance. And also I've never played any sort of goblin-y character in any game that I play, including Dungeons and Dragons. So coming up with names is tough. This is a really great name. And I see you got a huge backstory here.
I do. It turned out it was I was going to put a sentence or two in just to give it a little bit of a backstory, and then it just started flourishing in my head, and I got this whole story. I saw what she was doing in her youth and everything too. So why don't I just jump into it and tell you a little bit more about Twex Boom Skimmer? And I did want to give her a link into some more well-known characters too, since Twex is just a made-up character on my part. So I made sure that she had that link in with Gazlo too, and this is how it works. So in his youth, Gazlo actually fell in love with Fees Boom Skimmer, who's Twex's mom in this case, a brilliant goblin engineer and fellow lover of gadgets and explosions. However, while Gazlo loved Fees, she could not compete with his true love, gold. Right? Like every goblin. As the Horde moved to Durotar, Gazlo seized this very profitable opportunity, choosing profits over love, leaving Fees and becoming the chief engineer for Thrall, and ultimately the leader of Ratchet. Gazlo's greed had never been satiated, and his thirst for more gold turned Fees into nothing more than a distant memory. But unbeknownst to Gazlo, Fees was pregnant with Twex when the lovers parted ways. Fees was forced to raise their daughter Twex on her own, a very bright goblin that quickly surpassed both of her parents in ingenuity. While she, like all the other goblins, had a penchant for profits, she never developed the greed that so consumed her father. However, Twex was consumed with a different fault, the need for fame and recognition, perhaps in spite of her father's abandonment and later widespread fame. So Twex had quickly made a name for herself amongst goblins and non-goblins alike by producing breakthrough after breakthrough in goblin Zeppelin technology. Twex's personal Zeppelin, aptly named the Boom Skimmer, after her last name there, had no rival amongst Zeppelins. It's the fastest, strongest, and appropriately the most unnecessarily complicated artificial flying contraption in all of Azeroth. In fact, the Boom Skimmer is so unnecessarily complicated that she is the only person or thing capable of piloting it. So while Twex was making a name for herself in Zeppelin technology, she also is making a name for herself as one of the fastest and best Zeppelin pilots in history. She's currently the 4-time champion of the Kazan 500 Invitational, the world-famous Zeppelin racing circuit. She stormed onto the Zeppelin racing scene in her inaugural race by claiming the record for the fastest race time, previously held by the legendary Gizo's Strong Rocket, beating his thought-to-be unbeatable time by a stunning 10 minutes. I thought that was a little extra flavor there with her racing career, but that's Twex in a nutshell.
That is incredible. I can see the hero reveal video right now. I can see, you know, them reading it in that, you know, hero reveal voice that they do, you know. In his youth, Gazlo fell for Fez Boom Skimmer. Like, and then they're showing like the stills as it goes through, and they can, dude, this is so great. And it plays so well into the Heroes of the Storm lore. So now she's back. She's back in the Nexus. Is she out for revenge for her father that left her there? Or does she know that he doesn't know? Does she know that, or is she out to search for her father? She doesn't know who he is?
I'd like to think that she knows who he is, but she wants to kind of like make this big name for herself and become kind of famous and almost like rub it in his face a little bit. That's the kind of thought process I had with her there, being like, you know, you left us and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a better person than you. I'm going to become more famous, a better inventor, and one of the fastest Zeppelin pilots around because she's got a need for speed and she loves it.
That is too cool, man. Bravo, bravo. I love it. All right, let's get into some specifics here about how we're bringing Twex into the Nexus. So let's start with role classification. What role are you giving her and her Zeppelin?
This was a tough one, but you know what? If you don't know what it's going to be, you say specialist. So that's what I'm going here. The catch-all of roles, because she's not quite an assassin. She's not quite anything else. So specialist it is.
Nice. You know, we don't forge a lot of specialists on the show just because it's tough. It's tough to make them unique. It's tough to make them feel good, you know, when you're talking about it. So I'm stoked to hear about this. So give us a little rundown about how you think Twex is going to fit in that specialist realm.
Okay, so this was a really tough one. What I really wanted to do was make sure she gave a lot of mobility to the team, not like a Lucio and just giving like movement speed to everyone, because it's a Zeppelin. I figured, you know, we got to make sure that people can like load on, move around, and move fast too, and that would be what she brings to the Nexus over other heroes, is that kind of crazy map control and the fact that you can get anywhere faster than anyone else as like a whole team.
Nice.
Of course you have to like make sure there's deficiencies too in other areas, which is, you know, the kind of balancing act whenever you have this. You can't make units like super OP in every sense. There's got to be some deficiencies.
Yeah, of course. So where do you think those deficiencies lie? I mean, like, what's the general thought process through all this?
Oh, yeah. I think she's fast, but she's squishy. You got to be really careful when you get into those team fights because, you know, a quick, you know, flame strike or two and you're just done. So I wanted to make sure she's got a lot of range because she's high up in the air. She can attack from a long distance. But if she ever gets caught out of position, the other team can easily make her pay. And I also don't think she should do a ton of damage, at least maybe not outside of her heroics. So I wanted to make sure that was kind of a limiting factor as well. So just tapping damage from the outskirts, giving her team mobility, but not doing a lot of team fight oriented damage. Head specialist, not assassin.
Yeah, great. I love it. Let's get into trait here. What is the trait that's going to help her accomplish that?
I was having problems deciding what the name of the trait would be. Then I said, you know what? Maybe just the name of the ship would be a good one. So I called it Boom Skimmer. She's got 50% move speed and sight range. So not only is she fast, but she can see a lot farther. She's truly that like recon unit, and she can also pass over unpathable terrain, much like Medivh. So she can just cut across the battlefield. Doesn't have to take any sort of crazy pathing or anything. Obviously, she couldn't like cast an ability or like unload people in the middle of a river or something. But that's what I was thinking for the trait. Make sure she's got super mobility, and that fits right into the rest of her kit.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. When you say she can go over impassable terrain like Medivh, are you thinking that she cannot be targeted at specific points, or is she always targetable, unlike the Raven that we all know and love?
I think that unlike the Raven, she can be targeted no matter where she is. She's always vulnerable. I mean, it's one of those things where you got to try and stretch your imagination, because melee attacks hitting a Goblin Zeppelin may be a little unrealistic, but you know what? It's the Nexus. I'm sure we can make it work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the increased sight range, right? Because you talked about it a little bit in the RTS versions of Warcraft, where in the beginning it didn't have any sort of troop unloading or loading capabilities, right? So it was just used for recon. So that's a great way of kind of filing in that feel with this Zeppelin in the Nexus.
Yeah, and I mean, like, how powerful is like Tastar's Oracle, or like Chromie's, whatever it's called, where she like puts down sight in a certain area. Like, being able to have that all the time, I feel like is a really good trademark thing for her. No one's going to be able to sneak up on you if Twex is in the area.
I love it. So cool. So I'm assuming that she wouldn't have any sort of mounting ability with this sort of trait built in there, because she's already getting the movement and speed increase. So are you thinking something like Lunara?
Yeah, that'd be interesting if you could mount a mount, because she's like always on a mount, right? But I think that's too much like mount inception for me. So I was just like, you know what, no mounting. Like, she's already super fast. I don't know if I'm like what you do with a mount. If you go even faster, that'd be just too crazy. So she's always mounted up, very much like Lunara. Very
cool. So cool. Yeah, Inception, mount within a mount within a mount within a mount on a Zeppelin.
Yes, and that would be crazy. I really hope you got a mount for us too. I'd love to see how that works.
Are you dreaming, or is this a dream of a dream? Okay, let's talk about some basic abilities here. So the first basic ability, hit us with your Q.
Okay, Q is called Bombs Away. Now, I wanted to make sure there was some sort of damage in her kit. As I mentioned before, she's just doing like little piddly attacks from her cannons from a long distance. But I wanted to make sure there was something she could bring to team fight, something she could bring to wave clear as well. And Bombs Away is where they basically like unload all that like explosive cargo that they're like stowing away on the Goblin ship. And because it's a Goblin ship, there's a lot of explosive cargo. So they're dropping explosives like boom bots, TNT, exploding sheep, just like hoofing them over the side, dropping them down onto the battlefield, creating an impact zone that's kind of like, maybe like a blizzard size AoE on the ground. I'm thinking it takes a second for it to drop down, so maybe like 1.5 seconds to get from the ship down to the ground, but doing like decent like damage, probably on like, semi-long cooldown, like 10 seconds or so, just to get that wave clear sorted out so she can get a little lane pressure. And moving around the map, there's actually advantage to her doing that, because she can go around, maybe double soak lanes, that kind of thing, but also throw bombs on all the enemies too in a team fight, and give something to that as well.
This is so sick. This is so cool. Okay, so to talk to me a little bit about how these explosives work. So is it the kind of thought that we all see in Master and Commander or something, where the captain is standing there like, hold, and then drop it, and they all drop it at the same time in this AoE explosion area? Or are they all kind of just huffing things over the edge, and this AoE explosion area is kind of a dangerous spot to be for more than just the initial impact of one explosion?
I wish we talked about this before, because that's an amazing idea. My envisioning of it was everyone just pushing it all over the same time. But yeah, like how cool it would be if it was just like bomb, 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 bomb. Oh, there's an exploding sheep too. And like just like throwing them all over for like an extended period of time. But I was thinking everyone just like hold. Okay, push them over. Maybe have like little tiny like goblins who are like the goblin workers for Twex, and they all push them all over at the same time, throwing down like, the whole 9 yards of explosions on whoever happens to be below.
Heck yeah, man. I smell a talent in here. I smell a talent that you could pick at a certain point where you could extend the length of that bad zone that you don't want to stand in. I mean, maybe right at the beginning of the game, it's one big, atom bomb explosion in that area. But if you talent into it, maybe it lasts a little longer as they become less organized throughout the battle.
I like it. And like just that thought of having like the unorganized crew would be such a fun like thematic thing too, maybe where they're a little like, think about their own thing and don't listen to the captain as much anymore, right? And they just decide to throw over the bombs willy-nilly whenever they want.
I love it. It's the Sea of Thieves technique, I think. It's Sea of Thieves is hot right now, so that's interesting. Let's get to the second basic ability here. That first one is just killer.
Okay, the second basic ability on the W, we've got rocket launch. Now, this is where you fire a big rocket straight ahead of you. So it's a skill shot. I'm thinking about the distance of like a Vala Q, give or take. So I didn't only want this to be a damaging ability, but a bit of a disengage as well. So this rocket is so big and so beefy, it's actually got a recoil on it. So you shoot it in one direction and it pushes the Zeppelin backwards in the opposite direction. And then that rocket, whoever it hits, it'll push them back a far distance. They got to like ride the rocket a little bit before it explodes. And when it explodes at the max distance, it'll actually explode for like a little AoE effect. And I figured, this can affect minions and everything as well too. But, you'd use this if you're getting into that sticky situation that you don't want to be in as Twex. You can fire off your rocket launch, back off a little bit, and push them back to a nice little disengage that Twex has, not Twex. Oh yeah, sorry, Twex has up her sleeve.
Yeah. So cool. We haven't talked about anything like this on the show over the last 2 years, where you're firing an ability and it's actually pushing you back enough that you would use it as a disengage. I mean, that is so cool. What does the animation look like to you? So does it take a second for the rocket to kind of, what we see, where these rockets come out of the hull of the ship and it takes a second?
I think so. There's got to be like a little like little wick, right, where they light the end of it and it takes a second, maybe like with some sparkling effects, and then boom, off it goes. I'm thinking just ginormous like rocket firing off the bow of the ship, just going straight ahead and making for like a crazy visual, because goblins love over the top explosions and explosive devices. So it's got to be just like that to keep the theme.
Yeah, and with pushing the enemy back, I mean, this is great wave clear too, just giving your minions an advantage in the fact that they're closer to the enemy's team. I mean, you're closer to the forts and the keeps and all that stuff, but also the fact of disengage here, where you're able to not only do like a Vala vault distance away from them, but also they're vaulting away from you.
Yeah, and you got to be careful when you use it too, because maybe you don't want to disengage, so you shouldn't be using this rocket launch, right? So you've got to really think about the times you decide to use this too, because yeah, it might get that extra damage on the guy, but then you're going to be that much further away from them because you're pushing them back and yourself away as well.
Yeah, so cool. And you could use it to get over terrain that they couldn't pass over too, right? So you could line yourself up, because originally I was thinking, well, you could kind of line yourself up behind a wall, that way if you get pushed back it won't push you over the wall, but terrain is not an obstacle here.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that too. It gives them for very sneaky ways to get out of dodge, right? You just do that little recoil into a place where they can't follow you because you have that on your trait.
That's super cool. Super cool. Okay, let's get to the next basic ability here. What's this one called?
Okay, this one's a dual ability. Load up and get out. So load up is where you press the E button and you basically turn the Zeppelin into like a loading type vehicle, very similar to a medevac dropship. So anybody can get in who wants to. Then when you start moving, you're out of that load up mode because you take off. Like I feel like you lower a rope down when this happens, right? You lower the rope, they climb in, you start moving, and you can move the units at your normal movement speed. So, extra 50% bonus movement speed faster than anyone can mount. You can go over terrain so you can get places faster. You can take the team from lane to lane so fast, take them from boss to boss. Like there's just so many different like things you can actually do with it as well. Now, one thing I was really worried about was that this would become the ultimate trolley thing, right? If the allies couldn't get out until you told them to, that would be a problem, because you could get a situation where everyone gets in and you're like, nope, I'm just gonna fly around and troll the whole team. So I was like, you gotta let the allies get out when they want, so they can just right click. I almost would love it if there was like a little animation where they turn from like really tiny to like really big as they jump out, and they just kind of like bail over the side, like just man overboard type style. But yeah, so they just right click out or press an exit button, maybe like bunker, and get out of the ship whenever they want to, or the Twex can just press the E button again and kick everybody out and just unload wherever she happens to be. This, like I said, would be great for just like rotating from lane to lane. I can't even think about the pro play implications of something like this. I feel like it'd be like super powerful because medevac could be used in a lot of cool situations. And this is basically like maybe a slower moving medevac, but a medevac that's always off cooldown.
Oh, so cool. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about this, because I'm glad you brought up the medevac, it being a heroic ability where you're able to, you know, move people to one direction, everybody gets out. There is the opportunity to take the medevac out while the heroes are trying to load into it. So how does it work being a basic ability where you're moving them around constantly with death? So if the Zeppelin is destroyed, does it work like a medevac dropship where everybody kind of drops out of it, or are they taken out as well?
I'd like to think that the death animation for Twex's Zeppelin in general would be maybe like caving in the middle and just like exploding a bit. So again, I'd love to see Blizzard take something like this and just run with it and have like the little bodies. Like, again, I like to think that you'd see like the miniaturized versions of whoever's in the ship, like on the actual ship itself. But if it exploded, like maybe you'd see them get bigger, and like you just fall onto the battlefield. Maybe they get stunned or whatever when they come out, but Twex would be dead, but they wouldn't necessarily die as well. They just kind of fall out of the ship. Maybe be injured too. Maybe that'd be a cool mechanic. They lose 50% of their health if they're in the ship when it explodes. But remember, that ship isn't like a medevac too. Like, she is going to be squishy. So getting rid of that and killing Twex when she's in that load up mode, that's not something like a medevac where you, like in the middle of a team fight, you're going to want to load up your teammates, because, you know, especially if there is some sort of detriment to having Twex die when you're in it, you're going to be in for it, and she's very vulnerable in that position.
Yeah, I love it. You fit perfectly on this show, Daz, because all we do is talk about things that the animators at Blizzard are probably like pulling their hair out about. I mean, I want these little people that live on the ship and then they jump off and they become full size. I mean, it's great. It's such a cool idea. A medevac on a basic ability, basically. I mean, so cool. So cool. How does the cooldown work for something like this?
Ooh, so I was thinking not like terribly long, but you don't need it to have it up all the time. So maybe like 25 seconds, like 30 seconds, something like a tracer blink, enough to like get from lane to lane and be able to do those rotations, but not enough where you can do some weird like cheesy things where like you load everyone, load them out, load them in, load them out, and you gotta like actually think a little bit about when you're going to use it.
Totally. Talk about balance. I mean, this thing would have to be balanced really well, and I think if it was, it would work really well. Let's talk about the best part. Let's talk about some heroics here. What's your first heroic for your Zeppelin?
Okay, so one thing we were talking about off camera actually is that while I didn't play a lot of WoW in my day, I did read a lot of the Warcraft books. I feel like I've read most of them, and one of the books that I really liked, and I can't recall the name of it offhand, but they go over like Jaina and the whole Theramore bit where the Horde and Garrosh drops a mana bomb on Theramore, essentially destroying Theramore and destroying Jaina in a lot of ways too, and changing her drastically, her outlook on life, being that peace-loving Jaina to post-Theramore Jaina, like a lot of people like to call her. So famously or infamously, the mana bomb was delivered, and the mana bomb is basically is the name of the ability. It's also like a huge like nuclear weapon, or like as close as you can get, I'd imagine, in the Warcraft universe. So like that was the delivery mechanism that the Horde used was a Zeppelin. So I figured, you know what'd be great is if we had a mana bomb as one of the heroics, a massive explosion. And it's tough to take something like this and not make it OP, right? But still make it impactful enough. So I wanted a huge, massive bomb, like even the size of like, you know, Diva's explosion. But I wanted to make sure it was a little bit different too than like just your standard Diva explosion. I don't want to copy what Diva's already got in her kit. I want to try something different. So I figured I'd have a long detonation time, again kind of similar to Diva, but maybe even like 6 seconds, like really long, because if someone's caught in that, I want to make sure that it's like the absolute like delete button heroic that you could find. So 6, maybe even 8 seconds, because I'm worried like someone might wombo combo with like a Medivh ley line. There's nothing you can do, no counterplay to it. I want to make sure they can get out of it, because not only does it delete whoever's in it, but it also deletes terrain too, which I thought would be a kind of cool mechanic too. And I don't even know how this would work, if it would even be viable, but you know what? I wanted to throw it in there. I'd love to see the animation come out where everything that's in the explosion, it kind of like the explosion would go like maybe this like very like bright white in the area and turn everything kind of like pinky purplish for a bit, and then just like see it disintegrate to the floor and just leave like a trail of destruction in its wake. So that was my thought for the first heroic.
Oh man, that is so cool. I love the terrain idea. Playing around with terrain is something that I feel exactly the same way you do. Would that be cool? Would that be fun? Would that be something that would be useful? Would it be super overpowered? Would it be something that, you know, it would be viable in this game? Who knows? I mean, Blizzard probably knows. They've probably played around with all of these types of ideas, and maybe that's why we haven't seen it. But if they were to do something like that, the mana bomb, I mean, basically, like you said, that destroyed Theramore, is the way to do it. Now, how does this react to structures? Because if we're destroying terrain, the first thing I start thinking about is, are we just going to be able to auto-delete structures with this thing?
See, and that's the thing I was worried about too. You can't just delete a keep with an ultimate, right? Especially with someone who can get in, get out so fast. I was like, there's got to be something to it. So I started looking up pictures of the destruction of Theramore post mana bomb, and I did notice that the structures were still standing a bit. So I was like, you know what? It can just do a lot of damage, maybe some sort of cap damage to structures, but still a lot, because I feel like even with my second ultimate as well, that a lot of her kit is like run the other team around the map, right? So they're chasing you, you run off, you just do a quick nuke and get out type thing, right? So you can drop that mana bomb, which is probably going to be on a huge cooldown. I'm thinking even bigger than anything we've seen before, because of how powerful and destructive it can possibly be. And even though it might have counterplay in a team fight, like everyone will get out, like, hey, maybe that's useful too, right? Like maybe this deletes your own team. Maybe that's what makes it more balanced. So like you can't just drop it on an objective. Everyone else scatters and you guys can collect the curse like willy-nilly. Like everyone else has to run away too on your own team because it's a mana bomb, and just because you're on your buddy's team doesn't mean you're immune to a mana bomb. So maybe that's exactly how you balance it. I don't know. That's what we let Blizzard have to deal with. We just think of the cool stuff, right, and let them work the details out.
That's right. Amen. That's our tagline for our show. We just think of cool stuff, not the details. I love this. And I was thinking about terrain and positions that you can really capitalize on that. I mean, I'm thinking Dragon Shire. I'm thinking about Infernal Shrines. I'm thinking about people that hide in those bushes right by the wall. You know, what if there was no wall? I mean, that would completely change the map. I mean, we're talking about totally different maps at this point.
Yeah, and I don't even know what maps this would be OP on. Like, there's so many implications to modifying terrain. This is probably one of the reasons Blizzard's never really thrown it in there before. It changes everything, including like how you'd have to approach map design and thought about like where you're putting all those events, what maps this would be super strong on. Like, yeah, you take your Dragonshire, for instance, or even like a small map too. By the end of the game, there might not be any terrain left on Tomb of the Spider Queen if you took this ultimate. I don't know, but it would be fun to play around with, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm down, man. Do it. Make it a brawl. Make it something tested out. See if you can take the terrain out. Maybe it's just 5v5 Zeppelins with mana bombs and the whole terrain just becomes one flat tile set. I am down for that. Let's get into second heroics here. What could possibly trump the mana bomb?
Well, I try to trump it with an ultimate called Sapper Rush. Now, going back to my Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3 days, one of the units that I really enjoyed that haven't really been represented in the Nexus are the Goblin Sappers. Those kind of like suicide bomber type units that they just strap explosives all over their body and they just love it. They don't even care that they're dying. They're running in, just making the biggest explosion they can. The ultimate, Goblin sacrifice. So I was like, you know what? We'll have the Goblin Zeppelin come in. We'll have all these sappers just maybe jump over the side of the plane and parachutes. They land on the battlefield and they just start running in the direction you cast it in. I'm thinking like Hanzo's big dragon ultimate that he throws out type thing, where there's this whole like bunch of sappers running in a direction doing tons of damage. There's sappers, so extra damage to buildings and stuff, but you don't want to be caught in this. So it's also something that if you're a hero, you want to get away, because having goblins run out dynamite's got to be a scary endeavor.
Absolutely. So tell me how it works with the explosion. So the first enemy unit or structure that they run into is when they explode?
I think so, for sure. And because it's more like a March of the Murlocs and there's like a ton of them running off, I think, yeah, the first thing that it comes in contact with, even if it's a minion or mercenary, it'll start exploding. So it just runs, first thing it hits, boom, does a little AoE explosion. So you don't want to be casting it into a minion wave. You want to be doing it on like a structure that's got a clear path to it, or a clear path to a whole bunch of heroes. So yeah, watch out for those walls, for like other terrain too that they might bump into. So I'm even thinking they explode if they hit like impassable terrain. So if they hit like a tree or whatever that's sitting on the map, that's something you can't just go from the side of a fort and like throw them through terrain. Because they actually hit that and explode. It kind of reminds me, I guess, of like Zagara's Q, which I throw out into terrain all the time, hoping it'll roll around, but it actually explodes. Same thing with the sappers. But yeah, the idea here is you want to use it, I guess, to take out structures and put that extra pressure on the map.
Yeah, like a specialist would do. I mean, this is great. This is March of the Murlocs, but with goblins that are ready to go in there and just explode.
Exactly, and I think it'd be fantastic to see.
Maybe they would say "My life for ire" as they run in there. Man, what a great kit. What an awesome synergy with your trait, being able to be anywhere and see everything. I mean, not entirely, but still, it would feel like that if you had that 50% movement speed and the sight range using that trait. Not to mention, throwing bombs over the side, launching huge rockets, carrying people around to get places even faster. Talking about a whole global team. There are tons of maps that we see out there where, globals win the game. I mean, especially in Bronze League, I can tell you that, where globals and just being places is amazing, and especially if you bring with you a mana bomb or a sapper rush. I mean, this is an awesome synergy to all these abilities, and it feels like a high damage dealing specialist.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I tried to make sure a lot of this was more like structure and minion focused, but yeah, like the ultimates could potentially do a lot of wombo-y combo-y damage, but I wanted to make sure that her like basic kit wouldn't do a ton of team fight damage, because you can't just make them OP everywhere. There's got to be the deficiency somewhere, and I wanted to try and make sure that team fight outside of maybe the ultimates were the downside to Twex.
Very, very, very well done. It's like you're a forging professional already, working through your first time on the show. Awesome.
Well, I'm learning from the best.
Before we move on to my kit, we have some people that we definitely need to thank, and those are the people that support this show on patreon.com/HeroesForge. Check it out over there. We have some awesome goals, including a Flash Forge, which we actually got the idea from when we were on the Nexus Trolls for Flash Forging, and if we reach that goal, we'll be providing an extra 10 to 15 minute episode for all of our patrons over on the site with a Flash Forge every single week, so make sure you check out that goal, and thank you to everyone that is supporting the show over there. As you guys know, you are rock stars. Also, thank you to everyone that's given us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps the show grow for everyone that goes on there and searches for all the awesome Heroes of the Storm podcasts, including the Nexus Trolls. Our name pops up with all of those Heroes of the Storm Legend podcasts, so make sure that you check it out. And thank you so much for everyone that has dropped us a review already. All right. Here we go, Daz. I'm going a completely different direction with mine, and I'm saying that my Zeppelin is going to be a support.
I like it. I was wondering which way to go with it, and I feel like the obvious route is the specialist bit in this case. But I used to be a support main, so I love getting new supports to come into the Nexus. I'm excited to hear what you got up your sleeve here, Jeff.
So here's a question for you, because I know that for Kristen and myself, it works a little differently every week, where we start thinking about, like when you sent me Goblin Zeppelin, I immediately think, oh, there needs to be this type of ability. So in that case, I start with the ability, right? And then I start building abilities and go, this kind of feels like a support character, and then build from there and then call it a support. Sometimes there are things like if Kristen was to send me, Kerrigan, for example, I'd be like, oh, well, Kerrigan's got to be an assassin, right? I mean, that's an assassin, and then start building from that base point. When you started building the Zeppelin, did you start with the role and kind of line it out from there, or did you start coming up with abilities and think, you know, this feels this way, and then continue to create from that point?
I think I did what Blizzard has said in the past they typically do. They'd have the character they know they want to get into the Nexus. They start thinking about what would make sense thematically for that character, at least in their mind. And then from that point, they'd say, okay, this makes sense as an assassin because these things that we want in with that character. And that's what I thought. I was like, hey, Goblin, Zeppelin, what are they known for? Mobility, speed, vision. And I was like, well, as soon as you start getting down that route, you're looking more like, especially considering the Warcraft 2 unit didn't have any sort of offensive weaponry. I was like, hey, this has got to be a specialist. And that's the way I went about it. Again, like, I don't even know if specialist is the perfect word for it too, because like, there's so many weird things that they bring to the table in this case. They're not necessarily your regular specialist. Specialist just seems like the catch-all for the wackiness that can become into heroes sometimes, like your Abathurs and Medivhs, right? So this case, I thought, you know what? That's how it pigeonholes itself into the specialist category.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head at the very beginning of the show when you were saying, whenever we don't know where to put somebody, we're just going to put them in the specialist, and that works out. So I tried to force this into a support role, and the captain on my ship is called Captain Newt Loot, just because I wanted it to rhyme, and yes, I used a rhyming dictionary.
I love it. And there's nothing wrong with cheating to come up with, you know, like clever names and such too. I did the exact same thing for Twex Boom Skimmer too, using the WoW generator, right? So.
Yeah, you gotta cheat to compete. And speaking of that, is the trait. The trait on my support Zeppelin is called Soar. So the thought for this kit is that I want the Zeppelin to be a support hero that's super dependable and able to support the friendly team even in the most difficult situations like team fights or map objectives. So with this trait, you can activate it, and the captain of the Zeppelin, Captain Newtloot, will take the Zeppelin to 30,000 feet, making it not visible to the player or the enemy team for a short amount of time. So while flying high, the Zeppelin player will be able to control its position on the battlefield and still move, and you'll be able to do that because you'll still see your little hero circle on the battlefield. The enemy team won't see that, and your friendly teammates won't even see that, but you're able to control your position while you're at 30,000 feet. When it's completed, the Zeppelin will coast back down to the battlefield and to be able to be targeted again. So this is like a extended Vault of the Wardens. You're able to fly up, you're not going to be able to take any damage, you're not going to be able to get hit by abilities, and then you're going to coast back down without any turbulence, hopefully.
So how long are you figuring they're up in the air, or is it something you can toggle back off to come back down? Like, what are you thinking the uses of this would be? Is it just to escape that damage, or could you jump up and like maybe like peek over a bush for a bit and do some recon with it? Like, what are you thinking this is going to be?
Yeah, I was thinking more of the support aspect of it, and we'll get into one of my basic abilities, but I mean, if it's a Zeppelin, you got to be able to load people on it, right? That's like its main through line. So what if you could load people onto your Zeppelin and then take them to 30,000 feet? I mean, this is a very technical thing that they would have to implement in the game. It has to be 30,000 feet. No, I just
very important.
But anyway, so they take them up into the sky to where you can't see or target them, and that would give you the opportunity to help people and support them in that sort of fashion. So that's the angle I was coming with it. Now, I don't think that you'll be able to be up there for very long at all. Maybe just, maybe, I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 times the length of a Vault of a Warden. So Vault of the Wardens is almost instant, right? So you're able to be up there maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and then you come back down just to kind of escape. Or if there's a mosh pit or something that's happening, you'll see how these other abilities play into that.
That must be such a wild ride too, to be on that Zeppelin when it's making that pitch up into 30,000 feet. I don't know if I'd want to be on it for more than 5 seconds too. You need like an oxygen mask because the air's a little thin up there. I imagine it's really cold, and it's got to put the fear of something into everybody on.
Absolutely. It's like one of those airports that you fly into that have a sound ordinance around the airport, and they're like, well, we're going to be landing, and it takes them 3 minutes to land instead of 30. Yeah, it would kind of feel like that. Maybe they're for animation wise would be little piles of vomit on the deck because it's just
And a sound ordnance spray too, so you can drop it on the battlefield before you take off.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cool. So with that trait, we'll move into the mounting. So I thought that, you know, your same idea with the rocket coming out of the front of the Zeppelin and firing that rocket. I thought there would be some really cool animation where this giant booster would come off on the back of the Zeppelin and then just fire like a booster shot that would allow her to get a faster, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a boost of speed for a short amount of time. So something like a Probius mounting, right? Where you can go faster for just a short amount of time.
That just screams Goblin to me too, like just hitting that boosters. I'd like to see a lot of flames coming out of the back maybe too, just to make it like over the top. What do you think for like animation for this too? Like how is it gonna look when you do that lurch head? Are the enemy team, is it gonna be really obvious for them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be comically big, like a comically big, maybe the front end of the ship, you know, kind of points up because it's getting, you know, boosted so fast. And then, of course, everybody that's on the ship, the little crew, you know, their hands would go up and they'd say, "Wee!" and they'd fly across the battlefield.
I think those words are printed on the first page of the Goblin handbook, comically big.
The first thing you need to know is that it needs to be comically big. The second thing you need to know is this next basic ability over here. The next basic ability is called Use Guys Merchandise. I stole that name from one of the shop that I saw at one point. Use Guys Merchandise. So when activated, the Zeppelin will drop a relic that they found on one of their adventures, and it'll pulse with a healing wave that heals all friendly players. Something that we've seen before, right? But this relic is able to be attacked by the enemy, like those other ones, but it has more health than what we think a normal totem would have. And also, the biggest point of this relic is that when it's destroyed or the timer runs out, it will let out a massive healing burst for all friendly players in range. So not only do you have to deal with it healing the enemies around, but also if you destroy it, it's going to burst heal all of those people that are near it.
Interesting. So like if you're on the enemy team, you may not even want to damage it because you don't want that team getting that burst at that crucial moment. And it sounds like it take a lot of resources to get rid of the thing too. And it's going to go off anyways and give that big heal at the end. So there's some interesting decision-making processes you'd have to go through in a team fight if this thing gets dropped on the ground. Yeah.
And, you know, placement would be a huge portion of the Zeppelin player's job would be to find out, you know, where the best placement is for this thing. Do you want to put it right in the middle of the fight so it starts taking AoE damage from the enemy team? Is the burst that big? Like maybe you talent into the burst of this ability, Use Guys Merchandise, where you're talented into it to where it bursts and it heals for even a crazier percentage of health. Maybe that's what you're going for. I mean, there's a ton of really cool ideas that you could play around with this, and the relics would change, you know, like maybe it's the golden monkey that you drop over the side, maybe it's the I don't know, a piece of one of the ships from StarCraft, or maybe it's like all of these different, you know, crossover relics that the Zeppelin has found throughout the Nexus.
Oh, that's such a cool idea. Yeah, I like the idea of just whenever they can having that crossover and lore, and even bringing things in from like the gold monkey. I'm assuming it's only from Hearthstone, but I don't know because I don't play a ton in a while. But even just like bringing things in from Hearthstone like that too, to like make this game truly the game that just is the Blizzard universe all in one.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. I think it's super cool. The next basic ability is called Bow Wow. Get it? Like the ship of the bow of a ship. So this one is
gotcha. It took me a second to get that one. That makes so much more sense now.
It's like bow wow. It just really has nothing to do with dogs. Well, maybe we could make it in. I'll explain it in a second. So this ability will make a massive cannon appear from the figurehead of the ship. And as we're talking about this, I'm deciding that the figurehead on this Zeppelin is a dog. Like this big, massive, maybe like a Rottweiler looking dog on the front. And of course, all of the skin tints would be different types of dogs because we know that Blizzard loves dogs. So yeah, we just made that decision right now. So this cannon will fire a lobbed cannon shot at the enemy that will deal damage and stun players in its small explosion area. Super basic, super, you know, piratey feel where you've got to find out where that lobbed shot's going to go, kind of like a Morales grenade, but instead of pushing out, it'll stun everybody that's in the center of it.
Cool. So what kind of distance are you thinking here? Is this something you do from afar, I guess, being a cannon, or is this more like a closer range effect? Because that would be very powerful. You don't see a lot of assassins with stunning effects.
Yeah, I think it would be long range. I don't know. I think maybe that's the difference between the grenade, is that it isn't long range. Maybe it's closer. Maybe these cannons can't fire very far. So that would have to be played with, I think. But it's the damage dealing ability for this support character, which we've seen on, you know, almost all of the support characters out there. So, and again, the animation would be something just, you know, this dog, maybe the cannon comes right out of the dog's mouth or something and then fires and does something crazy. I don't know.
I'd love to see that. Again, you make the animator's job so much more difficult with all these things, but it just makes it so much more interesting. And I feel like if Blizzard ever takes something like this, they've got to listen to some of these little like nuances you come up with, Jeff.
Yeah, you know, these nuances that everybody talks about. I mean, Blizzard does pay attention to those things. I mean, we had a Blizzard animator on the show, and it was incredible to hear about how they have to go frame by frame to create these things and to create the way that it looks. I mean, it's really incredible. So always tipping our caps to the Blizzard animation team, because it is just that cool. So the next one, stick with me on this and tell me if you think this would work or not. This is called Precious Cargo. It lands on E, and it's a basic ability. So when this is activated, the Zeppelin captain will lower a cargo hook to the ground that will float just above ground level. If a friendly player comes in contact with this hook, they'll be picked up by the Zeppelin and instantly transported to the Zeppelin there, and then they'll gain the Zeppelin at that point. The rockets will automatically activate, and it will boost it like a jet engine, moving both units quickly away. So at the end of the movement speed boost, the Zeppelin will drop the friendly player to the ground safely. So this can be talented into later in the game to allow the player to pick up enemy heroes and pull them. You would also be able to choose another ability that would allow the player to heal the friendly player that's being transported. So both heroes are targetable during the transaction, and unless the Zeppelin is the Zeppelin can also activate its trait. So they're targetable unless the Zeppelin has activated its trait and flown up into the sky to 30,000 feet exactly, and then coming right back down, they would be untargetable. So this is what I was talking about. Basically, I mean, we see this in action movies all the time, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger's hanging by the rope of a helicopter, kind of just riding, not actually on the helicopter, because that would be too easy.
Yeah, having that like novelty hook come down and pick them up, that just I'd love to see how that look too, and it's very Goblin flavor as well. I'm jealous because I wish I thought of that too. Like just putting them on the deck of the ship, that's no fun, right? That's not what a Goblin would do. They pull them along with a giant hook. And yeah, that's a great thing to see on a support too. Like you don't see a ton of like friendly displacement on supports. I feel like if you ever would have that, it's like on a garage, right? With a garage throw, that's more of like a tanky thing. But putting on a support's a great idea. Giving them that like, let's get out of here, like escape mechanic, being able to save people that last moment. It's almost equivalent to having something like a divine shield or like an ancestral healing, because you get them out right at that very last crucial moment. You throw out the hook, you latch them on, you give them a heal, and get them out to safety. I think that's an amazing thing we haven't really seen on a support before.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thought process is just that, right? I mean, if you take the talent that allows you to heal them while they're on the hook, you know, so you come in and the combo would be throw your hook out, go up, pick somebody up, fly up, reposition to where they would be. They're getting healed during this portion, and then fly back down. What would the UI look like? I don't know. What would this animation look like of flying up? Would it be distracting? Probably. Would it be pretty cool? In my mind.
Definitely would be cool. It's gotta be, right?
So that's the hook, and that's why the trait kind of comes into that. You can use it for saving yourself or saving others, or you can pull somebody out. Say an ETC is doing a mosh pit, and then you come in and you hook that ETC. Would you even be able to do that? Probably not, because you'd get stuck in the mosh pit. Bad example. But if somebody was doing something bad, I usually just go straight towards an ETC mosh pit, but if they were doing something bad, you could pick them up and take them to 30,000 feet. Maybe you could even talent into dropping them.
That'd be scary to be dropping from 30,000 feet. Another thing I was thinking, would you be able to like maybe have like an extended hook where you could drop it while you're at 30,000 feet too, and like maybe pick someone up while you're already in the air? I think that might be a neat way to like maybe not just have it base, but maybe something you can talent into.
Dang, that's awesome idea. Yes, it's in the official kit. It'll be in the hero reveal video. You'll all see it. Speaking of hero reveal videos and horrible segues, let's move into heroic abilities here. The first one I'm calling Sky Barge. So throughout my research, my extensive research of Goblin Zeppelins, I ran across the Sky Barge, which is actually a unit that you can play in one of the original Warcraft RTSs, which was basically a Zeppelin with a different skin. It was like an undead Zeppelin, basically. So if you select this heroic in Heroes of the Storm in this kit, it'll transform your Zeppelin into a massive sky barge, and it'll be commanded by an undead goblin crew. So they've made some quote-unquote improvements to the Zeppelin, including the addition of sails, for no one knows why, and some damage dealing boosts. All abilities that healed friendly players now also damage the enemy team if they are in the area that this happens. It will also charge the auto attacks from the Zeppelin it'll change them to, instead of goblins firing hand cannons off the deck, to mounted cannons that deal slightly more damage but take longer to fire. So you're taking this ability when you need more damage on your team. You're taking it when you want to dish out some damage as you're flying around.
Talk about doing a 180 on a character at level 10, or I'm assuming at level 10 when you take this heroic. That just has so much flavor to it too. I love that, like the undead feel to it too. It reminds me of like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Like at least the first one where they had the undead ship and everything too. I think that'd be an amazing piece to bring to the puzzle.
Yeah, so it's basically doing it's just doing that. It's passive. So it's making your ship a DPS ship as well as a healing ship. So it lasts forever. So it's kind of like, taking a variant ultimate in some cases, right? Like Twin Blades, something like that, where, you're just really focusing on damage. Now the second one, the second heroic works in the same kind of way, but this one's called Uber Zeppelin. So this heroic also transforms the Zeppelin, but this time it transforms it into the Uber Zeppelin, which is actually, and I didn't make this up, it's the personal Zeppelin of the trade prince Galliwix. So when transformed, all healing that the Zeppelin does to the friendly team will be dramatically increased. The Zeppelin's W ability, which was the Bow Wow, it's still going to work like that, but also it's going to have a secondary portion of it called Mine Azurite Deposit. So this is directly linked to the Battle for Azeroth expansion for World of Warcraft. So for those of you out there that don't play WoW, what's happening is these Azurite deposits, which are basically the lifeblood of this planet, are popping up, and it's this mineral that is supposedly going to be super powerful, and we're not really sure who, what, why, when, or how when it comes to this Azurite, but it's important to the goblins, so I wanted to put that in here. So anytime what's going to happen is that on the battlefield, 3 Azurite mines will be placed randomly. It's the Uber Zeppelin's job to mine this precious material and increase the healing of all of its basic abilities, even more than it was when you picked this heroic. So you'll be flying around the battlefield, you'll run into a Azurite mine just popping out of the ground. Your W will change from your Bow Wow to a mine Azurite, and maybe like some goblins jump over the bow and ride the rope down and just start mining this Azurite, and then it boosts your healing even more.
You've just appealed to my RTS Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3 love, having to like mine the minerals and everything, like getting the gold, getting the trees, like all that lumber, and using that to like boost your output here. So the question I have right away is like, does this make the hero like weaker pre 10? Is it kind of like a variant in that like once he gets to 10 he's like a real hero and that's when you decide, like, or before, like, is he gonna be weaker 1 to 10, or is he still gonna have like a solid role there?
I think you're right. I think in order, like you were talking about balance earlier, I think that in order to balance this out, you'd have to be weaker until you got to 10. Then at 10, you could make the decision: do we need more damage and the same amount of healing, or do we need a lot of healing? And so when you take this Uber Zeppelin, you'll get a bonus increase, but then you have to find the mines on the battlefield, and they can be anywhere. So, you know, your strat might be, I'm going to go find the first mine and boost my healing up a little bit and then move forward. Or your strat could be, we're just going to keep playing this game, and when I run into a mine, I'll mine it if I can. So there's like a weird give and take there.
Yeah, the game within the game, right? I like that too, because there's so many times where you're in the situation, you're the only person left alive, and you're like, I don't really know what to do here, right? You don't want to run into a dangerous situation and like try and engage the team. But as this Goblin Zeppelin unit, you can just go and maybe look for a mine and try and like beef up your healing in the meantime.
Yeah, and then if you get all 3 mines, then you're at maximum healing output. And maybe there's a talent you can pick at like 16 that'll show you the mines' locations on the battlefield if you haven't found them yet. I mean, there's just some crazy weird ideas, but that's basically my Zeppelin build there for support. I mean, starting with the ability to soar up into the sky and not be targeted, and you can even take a friend with you with the precious cargo trait, and then of course dropping relics on the battlefield that do healing with that burst healing. The figurehead on the front of the ship, it's definitely got to be a dog, and it's got the bow wow huge cannon that comes out. And then of course transforming your ship, whether you want to do more damage or more healing once you get to 10, having that whole multi-class kind of feel there, but still classifying it as a support.
Talk about tough to draft around too. If you see the other team take this, you'd have no idea which way they're going to go in the draft. Is this going to be their primary support? Or are they going to use them more as the damage dealer? You'll have to find out. Not only will you have to find out when the game starts, it'll be level 10 that you'd figure this out. So I like the utility and the uncertainty this brings to the opponent's team.
I love stuff like that, Daz. Like in the game, I love the variant thought. I thought that was the coolest thing to add to this game, where you make the draft harder. That's the game within the game. You know what I'm talking about? Where you're playing that draft, and I mean, even in Creators of the Storm, we lost drafts and it lost the game. So more heroes that have the ability to change and completely alter themselves in the game, I think is awesome. I think that is so cool, and it'll make for more great esports moments. It'll make for more great, I mean, because you could say, are they going to go damage or are they going to go healing? Well, if they go healing, then we want to take this hero. If they go damage, we want to take this hero. So maybe we take them both and counter both picks, but then that screws up our whole... I mean, you can get into a huge thing about this.
In that moment when they hit level 10 too, and what, like, I can just see the ship transforming somehow into one of these other two, being kind of like that epic moment. It's like Varian when he goes twin blades. You see him pull the 2 blades apart, and you're like, oh, he's going twin blades, you know. And it is like, I'd love to see just the ship get like bigger, and all of a sudden like Galawix shows up or whatever, or that like turns into like the ghost ship too. If you take the other ultimate, just that moment, like seeing it transform in the battlefield would be a cool moment just to have in general.
Whenever I see a variant go twin blades, the first thing I always do is check to see if there's a Zord in the title of the person that's playing that hero.
Yes, we know that some of those Zords, TBK, might like to go twin blades from time to time.
It's great. It is great. That's my kit. But before we call this hero complete, we got to talk about truly the best part. I know I said heroics are the best part, but this is truly the best part of the show, where we talk about specialty skins and dance moves. Daz, hit us with your specialty skin for your Zeppelin.
It almost seemed like this is one of the first things that came to mind as soon as we started talking about Zeppelins. You gotta have a Goodyear blimp skin. It's like Yorick has to have a janitor skin. Don't know why that's not up yet. If you have a Zeppelin, you gotta have the Goodyear blimp, and that's the skin I'm going with. I'm thinking like full out like shameless. Like if they can't do the licensing, they could to get the Goodyear name, maybe they can go Boom Year or something more goblin-y even too, right? And have like different skin tints associated with it. But I want to see that white, blue, and yellow Goodyear blimp floating around the battlefield.
Yeah, and what are we talking about? Get the licensing. We want to see Goodyear out there, even with the little foot Goodyear logo. I mean, if you think about it, it's a tire company. How did this even come to be?
I don't know, but you know what? It's so iconic. So, like you said, they have to get the licensing for this. I don't care how much money you got to spend, Blizzard, to make this happen. Make sure it happens.
That's right. Make it happen. My specialty skin dance move, my first one was the Nickelodeon blimp, right? I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the Nickelodeon blimp all over the place when we were growing up. That orange. It's basically the Goodyear blimp, but orange. Maybe we have the Goodyear blimp with a skin tone of orange for Nickelodeon.
So both of our skins could be skin tints together, right? And be part of the same package. I love it.
And then the third one could be the MetLife blimp, which is with Snoopy and the whole thing.
I like it. My kids would love that one.
Now, my second idea for a skin, though, was from the critically acclaimed Oscar-winning film, The Mummy Returns. And in that film, there is a flying blimp ship. And it just screams Goblin Zeppelin.
I'm so impressed that this moment in the movie stood out for you enough to bring it into the Nexus. I watched all the Mummy movies years ago, and while they were, you know, maybe not quite Oscar worthy, they did have some pretty cool moments. And that blimp was a cinematic marvel as well. I thought it was pretty cool. So,
oh, you couldn't even tell it was CGI.
Yeah, right?
Oh, wow. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I put a link to the YouTube clip of the blimp. I mean, it will really make your week. You should probably watch it ASAP to watch that. Now, as for dance moves, I do this thing where I try to search on YouTube for the most, like, the most basic form of dance for whatever it is. So if it's like an undead character, I search for undead dance, and of course Michael Jackson's Thriller pops up, all that stuff. For this one, I did type in blimp dance, and I also typed in Zeppelin dance just to see what would come up.
You gotta be careful what you Google, Jeff. You never know what might come up.
This is YouTube, thankfully. This is YouTube, so it's kind of filtered. So what I did search was for that, and what apparently, and this was too much of my life spent after I searched this, watching people wear these big blimp man suits, which are like air-filled suits, and then they just dance around like, you know, they're extremely like large people inside of these air suits, and it's hilarious. So one of the ones I thought was really interesting was the Whip and Nay Nay by the Blimp Man. So with this dance, the top of the blimp is actually going to transform into a blimp man, and the animation team is going to have to do the Whip and Nay Nay.
I had a friend who invested in one of these suits for St. Patrick's Day. It was St. Patrick's themed, and it was possibly one of the funniest things I've ever seen at the bar. And drinking green beer while watching a blimp man dance in a leprechaun suit is something that everyone should see at least one time in their life.
I'm seeing it now in my mind. All right, what's your dance move?
Okay, so I was having problems figuring out a dance move too. So I you know what, this morning, like my kids woke up Sunday morning. We have a tradition. We watch a movie first thing when they wake up to kind of get them out of bed. We were watching the Lego movie today. And the first thing that pops on as soon as you watch Lego movie, you haven't seen it before, is this very repetitive song that's kind of annoyingly catchy called Everything is Awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, how awesome would it be if like you just had like little tune playing in the background, everything is awesome. And then just all sorts of stuff happens with the blimp, fireworks popping out, a marquee along the side saying like everything is awesome, like goblins hanging from ropes just doing like little dance moves on the side, everyone just having an awesome time. I thought that would be a great dance move for the blimp. I
love it, man. That is so cool. And this also opens up another skin idea. What if you had a Lego blimp? I mean, there was a Mega Bloks version of the Goblin Zeppelin that I saw during my research. So you could do a Mega Bloks version of the Zeppelin and then just complete full circle.
You've just opened a door you can never close, Jeff. Every hero in the Nexus could have a Lego skin. How cool would that be?
Yeah, but not before Janitor Leoric. I'm glad you brought that up because we bring it up every single show. But before we go down that huge rabbit hole, we have to say that this hero is officially forged. what a cool idea to bring another transport into the game, the Goblin Zeppelin, and how would we do it? It's clear that for every hero that we talk about on the show, there are thousands of ways to implement the thousands of characters for this game, that it's inspiring to think that, you know, the great minds over there at Blizzard that are able to come up with stuff like this have so many options of stuff to test and try and play with. And the Zeppelin is one of those things. I actually think this could possibly be a hero in the game. Maybe not the way that we talked about it, but I love the thought of a basic ability transport.
I do as well. And you know what? Blizzard keeps coming with these like novel ideas to throw at us and things that you just haven't seen before. Even like Phoenix coming to the Nexus too. You're like, you know, he's got shields, he's got like warp abilities. Like he just plays completely different than every other assassin. And talk about playing different than any other character we've had in the game. But throwing a Zeppelin into the mix, that just screams like something that, you know, may be that hole that needs to be filled, right?
I know. And then I see an awesome opportunity here for when Battle for Azeroth comes out. What if they made the Zeppelin and then they made the War Barge on the side of Alliance, and then there was 2 new heroes, and you could do that. I mean, at the very least, we need those mounts, right?
Oh yeah, how do they not have a Zeppelin mount? That almost guarantees that the Zeppelin hero is going to be coming into the Nexus at some point. There's nothing that's even similar in terms. They always talk about silhouettes and being, you know, conflicting with other ones. We don't have any like Widowmaker skins to be like, okay, well, even Widowmaker's not coming in the game because there's a skin for Nova for Widowmaker. We don't have any sort of reference to Zeppelins here, so we know he's got to be in the oven getting forged as we speak.
That's right. You heard it right here, ladies and gentlemen, on HeroesForge. Zeppelin confirmed, release date TBD. We'll have to find out when that happens. But I agree with that. I mean, I think there would be something really cool there, and especially watching things like resurrecting Kel'Thuzad, right? When they start going through, you know, putting the Warcraft 3 model in the engine and running it as Kel'Thuzad from Warcraft RTS. I mean, maybe they're doing that with Zeppelins and trying to figure out how they make that happen. I mean, that's awesome.
Well, Blizzard, we've done half the work for you here. Now you just got to figure out how to implement all this stuff we've just talked about.
That's right. I think we might have done a little bit more than half, if we're being 100% honest here. But
there's a lot of animation going into this, Jeff. I don't know. I think we've done a tiny little insignificant fraction of exactly what this would end up being in terms of workload here.
That's right. I think we've probably scratched the it's some sort of cryptocurrency percentage that we're down here at 0.00007% of what it would take to bring something like this to life. But who knows? Maybe someday. All right, Daz, where can people find you on the interwebs when you're not doing your thing? I mean, I was going to say when you're not on this show, because that's what I say to Kristen, but when you're not around hosting on other shows, where are you?
Well, if you're looking to find me, you can find me on Twitter at DazHots, DazHots. And you can also find the stuff that I do over at trolls.gg. We've got the Nexus Trolls, some creators of the Storm. We're actually doing a new beer league that we're going to be starting in a couple weeks called Bush League that we're doing with the guys over at Gankbush Squad and Nexus Commentaries too, where some listeners are going to be joining up with show hosts to play in like kind of like a beer league format. But yeah, everything over at trolls.gg, all the information's there. We've got a bunch of great shows, including the Nexus Trolls. Nexus Trolls Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/trollsgg. If you like my silky smooth voice and you want to hear it more, that's the place to hear it.
Amazing. Yes. Whatever you're doing right now out there as you're listening to this, go to your favorite podcasting app of choice and download the latest episode of Nexus Trolls. It is so worth it. You will not be disappointed, I guarantee. Did you say beer league?
Yeah, we call it like a beer league. I don't know if that's like necessarily a term that most people are used to, but I live up in Canada and I play a lot of hockey, and we call them beer leagues, where it's just, you know, like a bunch of like 30-something guys go into the rink, putting together a couple just, you know, hack teams, drinking some beers afterwards. So we call it a beer league. So that's how this beer league, I guess, naming kind of came into it. But yeah, we're just throwing some listeners along with show hosts from all these from the different shows. We're just doing it on Monday nights, just having kind of like a casual, like a game or two every Monday night, and it's gonna be casted by a bunch of cool casters too that we've got lined up, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with it, I think.
Awesome, man. That is so cool. Well, if you ever need anybody to fill in and drink beer, not necessarily play the game, I'm
or
down.
in that order.
I am down. If you're looking for me, you can find me right here on HeroesForge. We record the show live every Sunday at 12 noon Pacific on twitch.tv/AmoveTV because we're a part of the awesome entertainment and podcast network, AmoveTV. Make sure you check out amove.tv for more great esports and video game podcasts. There's some really, really stellar content over there, especially lately. So make sure that you check it out. You can find this show on any of your favorite podcasting apps of choice. We have Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, all of those things. So make sure you search for us. HeroesForge is all one word in order to find us. Follow us on Twitter @ForgeHeroes. That's where we have show updates and live updates about what we talk about on the show and schedule changes and stuff that's going on in the Heroes of the Storm world. Make sure you check it out. Again, it's @ForgeHeroes. On that Twitter page, you can also vote for which kit you think won the day. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with Daz's kit on this one. But if you'd like to cast your official vote, you can do it on the Twitter page. The winner gets to choose who we forge next week. And yes, Daz, that's right. If you win, you have to choose who Kristen and I forge next week. So when you win, make sure you send me a message.
I'm gonna go contract out a Russian botnet to make sure I get as many Twitter votes as possible, because that reward is the best thing you can dangle on a string for me.
Oh yeah, well I'm sure you'll win, and that is something you'll have to send me a direct message with who you'd like us to forge. The voting is open for 3 days after the live recording on Sunday, so if you're listening to this early enough in the week, get on over to that Twitter page and cast your vote. Also, if you'd like to send us an email, you can do that at contactheroesforge@gmail.com. Make sure you visit our website, which is heroesforge.club. It has all 112 episodes that we've done before this, where we're doing the same thing, talking about heroes that we want to see in the Nexus and what they might look like. And you know, the thing is that a lot of those heroes that we've talked about have actually come to the Nexus, so it's fun to go back and listen to what we thought they might have been. And sometimes it's eerily similar to some of the stuff that they're talking about on Heroes of the Storm, because some of these characters are so iconic that it's easy to think things like the Zeppelin would have to move characters around. So it feels like that. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that on patreon.com/HeroesForge. And a huge thank you to everyone that supports us currently over the show. We could not do it without you. Kristen will be returning next week from her vacation. And if Kristen, you're listening to this for some reason, why? Be on vacation. Enjoy it. I hope you're having a great time. And we'll see you next Sunday when you're back forging whoever Daz chooses when he wins the vote.
Hopefully. I mean, don't sell yourself short, Jeff. You come up with amazing ideas every week, and I feel like you're shooting yourself in the leg, and that's probably why Kristen wins a lot of the votes. You gotta hype up your own stuff a little bit too.
All right, if you want to get out there and vote for the true kit, vote for Kristen's, because she hasn't even come up with one on this one yet, and it would kick both of our butts for sure, I'm sure.
Yes, if she wins this somehow, I would not be surprised.
I'll put her up on the vote as well, just so you can vote for Kristen too if you'd like. Okay, Daz, any final thoughts on the Zeppelin before we call this show?
Blizzard, make it happen.
That's what we say often on here is Blizzard, make it happen. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We're going to call it there, and we'll see you all in the real world.